Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Road Monkey podcast. My name is Kevin and I host a show that delves into people's journeys, explores their experiences and shares inspiring stories from the moments and life events that have brought them to where they are today. We are marching through 2026 and it's officially National Apprenticeship Week. It's a poignant one for me as I did my own apprenticeship over 20 years ago and it really did shape the course of my life. This week's guest is CEO and founder of the amazing charity Coach Core. They utilise sports and apprenticeships to launch careers, and I'm extremely excited to be speaking to the person that started it all off, Gary Laybourne. I'm super proud to also share that in late April I will be running London Marathon for this amazing charity, raising funds for young people to access the opportunities that helped me kickstart my career in sport all those years ago. And this is my chance to give back. We're going to hear from Gary how his own journey started and was profoundly influenced by sport and the path that led him to creating Coach Core and the amazing things that they have done over the last 13 plus years. I won't say much more as it's up to Gary to take us on both his and Coach Core's incredible journey. So with that, we're going to get straight into it and our latest conversation of the Road Monkey podcast as we speak to Coach Core's founder and CEO, Gary Laybourne. Hello, Gary, and welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Kev. How are you, my friend?
I'm buzzing. Obviously, I think we've chatted about 1,000 times about doing a podcast, so it's quite nice to have to wait for an injury to come along to actually get you to stand still long enough to get us on records. But here we are. Do you want to give our listeners and viewers out there just a little bit of an introduction as to you, a little bit about your background, and obviously the organisation you work for?
Yeah, sure. And probably a little bit about my injury now that you've put that on a plate. So yes, thank you. Very, very privileged and excited to be speaking with you on this awesome podcast today. So yeah, Gary Laybourne. Day job is I am co-founder, CEO of Coach Core Foundation. Wear many other hats. Proudest one being dad. Next proudest one being a coach still. Trustee. Still volunteering, giving time in other projects. So very much spent a career in and around the sport for change coaching world. And yeah, the main focus of what we do here at Coach Core is about supporting marginalised, disadvantaged young people into employment through our incredible sport and physical activity sector, using sport as that hook, but actually giving them a trampoline to whatever the career pathway looks like, which I'm sure we'll get into today. Oh, and the injury, yeah, an Achilles and a bone shave. So that really has put me in one place for a while.
Well, it's certainly given you time to reflect, and I'm sure you'll bounce back twice as strong. So let's wind it right back. Where did it all start for you? Obviously, sport is life, as we both know, whether it's in our day jobs or outside of our day jobs. So give us where that first kind of sporty thread started for you and what that journey looked like to lay the foundations for, I guess, what's kind of come later in life.
Yeah, I think it genuinely has been my entire life. It's like almost a cliche, cheesy thing to say, but from my earliest memories growing up on some of the UK's pretty punchiest estates and from a bit of a dysfunctional kind of home life and stuff, like that was my escape. That was the council estate green that was our Wembley, the running and being able to ride a bike as your freedom and keeping away from the things at home that were upsetting you. You know, it really does transcend to that for many, many young people across the country. And it was certainly no different for me. So I became obsessed with sport for honestly as long as I can remember, watching it, playing it, talking about it, sticker albums, all those sorts of things. I was very blessed and lucky that genetics had a part in it, that my father, for all his faults, was an unbelievable soldier, a very high level gymnast, a PT. So his engine essentially was instilled into me. So after many years of trying other sports, being pretty good at some, but not exceptional really at any of them, it was that real first positive role model, which again is a slightly teary-eye thing for many, but my PE teacher was the first person that really took an interest in me and saw potential in a lad that was getting in trouble quite often, that was quite shy and introvert about certain things, but then would explode and now later in life, knowing I'm on the ADHD scale with that sort of thing, this one person chose to care and take an interest in me and realize, I mean, his words, I'm very fortunate. I was talking to someone last night about it. I work in this space as you do, and we realized that influence that they had. So I've got to thank him later in life. I've been lucky enough to do that. He hasn't passed away or anything like that or moved away. And he said to me, look, you're running around a football pitch, and have you not noticed at 80 minutes, everybody else is blowing and you're still going? I think we really should be doing more than just the school sports day here and getting you into a running club. And then he passed me on to the second and most influential person, certainly at that time, which was my running coach. So at 15, I started running around a track and very quickly rose up through the ranks. I had done very well in major comps, and thankfully in those days when sports universities used to let you through the back door with poor grades, but because you were a decent rank in a certain sport, I got to leave my situation at home. So I got to go to St Mary's University, start a whole new life in South London, which then carrying on, again, my coach was like, look, we'll probably not get you to an Olympic Games, but you never know, you might be able to represent and do quite high. But let's have a plan B. Let's get you coaching, which I started doing at 17. So as I say, for me, sport has been a personal, a passion and a professional journey from as long as I can remember. And it obviously leads us to where I am and we are right now.
Well, let's take us into the early conceptual days of the foundation and what it's become, because we're talking about baking something into its DNA, like your personal story of sport serving a wider social purpose and I guess life direction. For a lot of people, that is something I think we can all relate to. Anyone who works in the sports world probably has that story of, I came up, wasn't necessarily sure what I want to do. I wasn't quite at that Olympic level or whatever your equivalent is in your sport, but there was a path into work, and even if it's in volunteering work, actually opportunities to find a route and some direction. So just talk us through kind of where that first kind of nascent thread emerged, and then how that evolved into what it became.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all know you'd have to be living under a rock or not very aware of the role that sport plays in this country to turn lives around and get young people in particular back on track. There are some amazing charities, some incredible interventions out there, some brilliant human beings that are volunteering and giving time and running football sessions twice a week, whatever it might be. But working in this space for as long as I had, and having the fortune working at a brilliant charity called Greenhouse at the time, myself and the other peers there, we started to become really fed up because the model of Greenhouse was not just 2 sessions a week. It was sun up, sundown, every single day. We were there as youth worker mentors as much as we were there as sports head coaches. So I'm using that vehicle of athletics and things to support those young people and get them hooked and captured. But actually, really, I'm trying to put an arm around them, keep them on the straight and narrow. And I'd done that from 11 to 16 years of age. And I knew that these kids had so much potential and talent. But because of how they walked, talked, looked, where they come from, something that had gone on in their past, we knew that onward journey wasn't good. So I wanted to obviously find a way to continue that mentoring and continue that support for them. And yet at the time, like so many other charities, we're being asked to bring in volunteers and part-time coaches to support us. And it's that kind of, what are we doing moment? Like, these are the best representatives of this charity. They will live and breathe our values. They come from this local area. They are as diverse a workforce as we're going to find. They trust us. They know us. They love us. Why would we not want to do that? And so looking around and realizing, look, apprenticeships is the best way to do it because it's a minimum 12 months. They get to earn while they learn. This isn't just another piece of paper that means nothing in another job interview. This is a tangible, proper qualification for them. But it's not a fluffy sports project. We are getting workforce of the future. We are getting guaranteed hours from these young people. We are finding a way to really develop and mold and shape workforce that we know, and the statistics will tell you, will be loyal to us in the future and will grow through our ranks if we have the resources and the abilities to do that. And then using basketball terms, that's young person, that's employer, and then triple threat, it's the local community getting someone that looks like them, sounds like them, comes from that estate, back out there. That's probably where Coach Core would have stayed, a program for 20 young people in London off the back of the riots in 2011. But we got so fortunate, or certainly I did, that question of luck and hustle. I firmly am in the hustle camp, but the luck bit has its massive role to play. And right place, right time, a CEO that believed in me, and a brilliant director of programs, Mark Curtin. All of this feeling of myself and other coaches that we'd fed back got put into a paper. We bid for Royal Foundation funding. William, Harry, and Catherine's charity had just been established. The Olympic Games on the horizon. They knew that they wanted to put legacy at the heart of it and long-term change. And we were seemingly one of the only things that landed on their lap that was a long-term vehicle of change, not just another sport for good project, with due respect. And that was it. So we got a birth to life with, a very transactional funding relationship, but a profile that any new charitable project would kill for. And where my proudest sort of milestones change every time. But for me, it wasn't just about the amount of young people that got in touch going, what is this? How do I become part of this? I've disengaged with college. I want to learn in the field. All the things that we did to rip up the form book on what an apprenticeship looks like. Because at that time, there was only one training provider willing to actually train me as the lead tutor. Everybody wanted to put them back in a classroom. We were like, nope, it's not going to work. It's not what this is about. But it was the amount of employers and governing bodies that got in touch with us to say, what are you guys doing? How, can we learn from it? Can we adapt it? So we piloted it with the Welsh Rugby Union, Glasgow Council, 3 education bodies, 3 very different countries, obviously, and that has just then lit the touch paper ever since. So we started to scale the program 2015 to 2020 to show that it could live and breathe and get its own funding and its own support. And then we became an independent charity on the 1st of April 2020, which was a great time to set a charity up. So yeah, very, very proud to say, obviously, nearly 14 years on now, we've now supported over 1,200 young people, all sort of one or more marginalised groups into employment, supported nearly 300 different employers. And then the SRA study that was done on our 1,000th apprentice estimated that those 1,000 apprentices had supported 13.6 million participants to become more active, happier, healthier in the communities that need it most. So it's all gone a bit nuts, Kev, is the honest truth.
It's fascinating because the whole point, surely, when you're working with young people is to light a spark of perhaps a future or see a future that they can't see themselves. And you've taken that and turned that into, a structured workplace, not the PE teacher in the playground saying to the kid, hey, you should join the sports club and see what happens. Like, this is many steps further on from that. So could you just give me maybe 1 or 2, I guess, either stories or just kind of moments that resonate the most with you over those last kind of 14 years? Because I came along to the 10-year anniversary, which was obviously down in London, and there were some people speaking at that, and you just, I'm not going to say feel good, that's probably the wrong term, but I do think there is a self-affirming feedback loop of, I work in the right industry. In an industry that has this within it and promotes it and does everything it can to try and find paths for young people. It's something that there is a real feel-good factor around. So from your own reflections, what are some of the highlights, if you like, that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, as you would hope, that of those 1,200 young people, we know so many of them, and what that journey was, what it is now. I mean, that very first cohort of 20, there's still many that I keep in touch with. One, Terrell, he was 16, incredibly shy, didn't know where he wanted to go in life, knew that, he was an incredibly talented volleyball and basketball player, but just wasn't sure where it was. I mean, fast forward, breaks me, but he's now nearly 30, has his own child, but he's really high up as a trainer in Nike. And I speak about him because it also underlines that potential and that talent was all theirs. We've done nothing other than give them that little boost and help them realize that. But that actually career pathways, certainly at that time where we were really focused on coaching and workforce and sport for change in the field, it shows you that actually you just uncover that little thing, that module, that course, that introduction or event that you went to. And I really like that. I'd like to learn more about it. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to create just an army of coaches. We're here to just ensure that these young people get to realize, try different things, understand different parts of our sector, learn that sport and physical activity is so broad. It's media, medicine, it's business, it's all of these things. It's not just about running around with a clip pad and a whistle, right? And I think about others. I mean, one of the most inspiring young people that I've had the privilege of seeing grow was a young lady called Kadra, who Muslim young female, sat at the back of the room, who genuinely said to us, "I'm not even supposed to be here. My mum and dad don't think this is a career. Like, I don't think this is going to last." There's even video footage of her going, "I don't know how long I'm going to be on this program." And part of the kind of dissertation, if you will, they have to do a kind of community project towards the end. And within the secondary school that she was working, she set up a Muslim girls table tennis club. And so my two bits of pride with her story is, one, she is now probably 3-4 years in now, but she's a PE teacher in East London, inspiring obviously so many more young people through education. But the club that she set up still thrives without her. So there's a community legacy piece to what these young people leave behind. And you'll obviously excuse me when I get quite prickly of snowflake generation type comments, or they don't care, or they don't want to get out. One of my other hats in the world of athletics and stuff, hearing that young people don't enjoy cross country anymore. I was like, okay, cool. Tell that to the 47 kids in my squad that are there every single weekend who absolutely love tearing through the mud. So these misapprehensions and misconceptions about what young people of today are sweeping at best. And we love nothing other than to show those case studies and talk about those stories to bat it back down, basically.
That's fantastic. One of the things that obviously in my day job speak to a lot of sporting parents, and we talk about the value of sport when it comes to life, whether you work in sport or not, actually the value of doing sport. And obviously with your different hats over the years, you've worked with a lot of young people and seen them go on this sporting journey where they effectively acquire a CV skill set that you can't really put on their CV, or it's really hard to, but actually when you see it play out, whether that's turning up on time, attentiveness, coachability, all those other things. So what are some of the things that, again, working with people who have come on that sporting journey and have then progressed it into careers, what are some of the things that, in your view, you look at young people doing sport going, wow, they are developing A, B, and C?
Yeah, such a good point, Kev, because I mean, being very privileged to continue to kind of build our soapbox as we go here. I've started to speak at events that are wider than sport, if you will. And I've had that before where I've spoken about those transferable skills that being a coach provides. I was on a HR event talking about, if I told you about someone that can plan, deliver, evaluate, that can provide for individual learner journeys, that kind of stuff, that's not a HR professional, that's a community sports coach. So many of those skills and that resilience and that confidence of just being thrust. I mean, I know grown people, as I'm sure you do, that if you put them in the middle of 30 kids in a coaching session would just melt and go to pieces, right? So these young people coming in and building and honing those skills, they can take that into whatever career pathway they like. So it goes back to my point, the outward face says that they're doing this sports apprenticeship. Now, we've actually over the years now started to add in media and marketing and all of these things now, like events apprentices and things as well. But for us, it's that ability to be able to say to them, look, you can go anywhere you want with this. Yes, you're going to be learning as a coach, but you can go anywhere you want. And I think one of the other big things, as we know, in current climate, it's become so expensive to go to university now. And particularly in a sector like sport, I would argue that vocational workplace learning is going to benefit you anyway. There is a pathway and a structure to get to equivalent of advanced degree level within the apprenticeship frameworks themselves. So it's not the answer to everything. We don't claim that all roads lead to an apprenticeship. We just don't think that the education to young people is early enough or strong enough around it being a really viable, positive, strong career pathway, regardless of if you're disadvantaged or not. But for those that do face those barriers, it's a wonderful way of having no barrier entry into employment and full-time education again. So we will always champion that. And the other thing that I'm always extremely quick to say, and you've obviously raised it, is the power of volunteering. This country is built, as so many are, but this country is built on the power of those amazing human beings that put their hands up every week and go, I don't want anything for this other than bring happiness, joy, development, whatever, to not just young people, obviously, but right through to kind of elderly people, but do it on a voluntary basis. So the power of the volunteer, again, we're not here to say that everything has an apprenticeship solution. I'm still volunteering. I coach at the track twice a week, and at weekends you'll find me hammering around muddy fields or tracks in the summer with the groups, because I want to give back to the sport that gave me everything. And what's really interesting of our young people that pass through the program, 70% of them will stay in sport and physical activity. 30% don't. They go into other career pathways, which I'm certainly more proud of them, actually, because they've realized something within it. But we also know that they will come back and they will either stay engaged with their employer, continue to volunteer and give their time, because it is that sport just gives you that lovely opportunity of that virtuous circle. At some point it clicks and they understand, this is, someone has given me something, so I need to pay it forward. So yeah, I think for me, it's those transferable skills, making sure that the guys know and understand that they can progress their apprenticeship in whatever direction they want, but that also we are working particularly with employers and clubs to say this can be part of a solution. It's not the whole solution.
Well, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I want to touch on leadership, because obviously you're very passionate about what you do. You're a space leader, not just a charity leader, in terms of, there's a lot of people who look up to you in this community that we're fortunate enough to work in. So let's talk about your own sporting journey and some of the things that you've taken from running. And I'm sure you'll be very humble about it, but I think that was how we first connected, was through Twitter, talking about marathon training advice, and obviously incredibly experienced in that area. But there's a lot of things I have no doubt that you didn't train for when training for marathons that you actually now lean on in your leadership position. So we know that a lot of different people in leadership listen to this anyway, but what are your thoughts around, or reflections on, perhaps what a pair of trainers or running spikes has actually taught you when it comes to running a charity and being out there in front of Parliament and all the other things that you do?
Yeah, I love this question, because obviously it puts me back in my real happy place as well. I think for me, I'm hoping it's an answer to your question. When I mentioned earlier, obviously our first day, joked about it, 1st of April 2020. So on a serious note, there's two elements to that, right? So the first is the obvious one. COVID had just moved in. It's hard enough setting up a charity, with a pretty punchy start line with, the funds that we needed to go and raise and the young people that were still in our system and all of that kind of stuff that we needed to support. So there was a stress level there. But there was also a stress level in the fact that it wasn't supposed to happen that early. Like the charity that was housing us, we were due to not become an independent charity until 2022. Now, there's lots of valid reasons why we didn't. It wasn't that they purposely, transitioned us out on that date, but it just so happened that that's when it happened. Now, I had offered to fall on my sword twice. Very happy to say to you, of all people, the honest truth. Like, I am not a CEO. I've got a maths GCSE D. I'm from this background. I don't do that. I just run around in circles on the track or, across muddy foot. Like, I'm not a business leader. I got myself in such a state. And my chair, then, who continues to be there now, has been one of the most positive people I've ever met in my life. So Ed said to me, look, that's the point of leadership, Gary. Like, we believe in you because of the skills that you have, not the ones that you don't. The ones that you don't, we can help you develop. But more importantly, let's just put good people around you that's got it. So that was my first real slap in the face, positive. No, he's right. As a leader, you can't be everything. It's literally impossible. So the more I tried to be what I thought a CEO was, the more I ended up confusing myself, stressing myself, moving into zones and areas where I'd end up even trying to talk differently with different work, like all of that stuff. And I remember very distinctly going for a bike ride, that first lockdown that opened up. And it just, that epiphany moment hit me. And I'm like, why am I trying to be anybody other than a coach? Like, if I look at this through my coaching lens, all those sort of transferable skills we just spoke about a moment ago applies to leadership. Like, I set good cultures, I'd like to think. I'm good with people, I'd like to think. I challenge and empower others. We do all of these things. So I'm just going to stay on that bit and be really honest about the things I don't know very well and bring in people better than me that can do that, right? So I just apply that coaching running philosophy around, in my running life, I will set a macro cycle, a mesocycle, a microcycle. So it's the same with my workloads. What do I want to really achieve this year? What do I need to achieve in the quarters? What do I want to do in the month? The minute I just started applying that athlete mindset, that coach mindset, life as a leader became so much easier for me personally. It just how I thought about it, how I moved through it. And I've absolutely loved, I mean, ironically, the thing that worried me most around the finances, I am here to tell you I'm not a financial leader, but probably been my most enjoyable learning curve, really understanding it, putting myself in a space that I never thought I'd be in, and giving me the confidence actually to start to, have conversations and talk about things that I never dreamed I'd be able to sort of sit in a room and do. So, yeah, I think there's that element to it. And then I think we are incredibly privileged to work in a sector where there are such amazing peers that I have the real fortune to go and have a coffee or a beer with and talk to. And it's okay to admit that things aren't going well. It's okay to admit that you're feeling stressed and tired, that we've got a wonderful group of leaders and CEOs in our sector. Perhaps people don't even know it, that connect regularly and speak about things that are there, and we problem solve together. And I am very lucky in that, because I'm sure, like you, Kev, I've got friends that work in other industries who just don't have that at all. They're under so much pressure to hit sales targets, or there's a culture where they have to, be an alpha male or whatever it is. Like, I feel very, very lucky that we work in a sector where learning, failing, hopefully honesty, those sorts of values are run through a lot of us, and it develops me as a leader as a result.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about the charity, but I guess the strategic direction of the charity, because if I'd have said to you 10 years ago, 1,000 apprentices, you'd have gone, that's a big number. And the leap from 1,000 to 1,500 now doesn't suddenly seem like that much of a bigger leap. We're already on 1,200. So just talk a little bit about, I guess, the journey to this point, but this kind of curve effects that that journey to get those first 20, obviously was a huge amount of work and learning curves. And obviously you get this compound effect of you become more efficient and you become more connected and the team become better and better and better. But when you're at this point, like today in the sand, looking forward into the rest of 2026, what's the thing that excites you most moving forwards? And what do you see as, I guess, where you sit in this space moving forwards? Because let's be honest, the needs of the sector are changing. The skill set, they're having to evolve. They're having to be way more digitally savvy than ever before. Obviously, the fundraising side of things is more challenging than it's ever been. So where do you see kind of where we are now? To even, like, I'm trying to think, dare I say, it was 4 years ago when we sat down at that copper box to do that 10-year anniversary. So where do you see things like now and moving forwards?
So I'll start on a slightly negative note. Like, I think there's a lot of conversations with charities where, as a charity, your ultimate goal, regardless of where you work, your ultimate goal should not to not exist, right? Like, so the fact that we're still here and growing indicates that, sadly, there is a problem that is forevermore just, compounding, particularly for marginalized young people. We still have disadvantage. We still have, lack of diversity. We have all of these different things that are causing issues. We also know we are the only Western economy right now that has a youth unemployment problem that is still going up. Everybody else post-COVID got hold of it and it's come down. We're over now 1 million young people. So we know from a supply-demand cold view of this, we are in demand more than ever from young people. We also know, because of the economic climate, particularly for small businesses, 80% of our employer base is what you would call micro to small business. So charitable organizations, real community trust type things. They are really struggling, really, really struggling. So the fundraising element of what we need to do, the expertise, the additional value add and value in kind that we're providing to those employers has never been needed more. And then you look at active lives and all of the things that are going in the community to sort of bring that full circle around that triple threat of how we view things. The community needs more role models. It needs more sport and physical activity. The cost of gaining and accessing sport and physical activity goes up. So sadly, we are needed more now than ever across any of our three strands of how we view our audience. The bit that I'm excited about, though, is the fact that we as an organization, I'm a firm believer in a fish rots from the head, right? So if I don't model those behaviors, the organization won't either. So if I constantly strive to be curious and want to evolve and grow as a leader, it's important that the organization gets the opportunity to do that. And we do that in part by really truly listening to our employers. And our employers are telling us, yes, we still need community coaches. Yes, we want outreach youth workers delivering sport, whatever it might be. But to your point, we're desperately needing more digital savvy people within the organization. We really need people that can run fundraising events for us. We really need X and Y and Z. So we come back as a team and we go, does that fit the Coach Core ethos and vision? Well, ultimately, we are an employment education charity, ... We're using sport and apprenticeships as the hook. So as long as it fits within that statement, then yes, we should probably go and have a look at it. And as long as we're still within our sport and physical activity safe space of knowledge and connection and all of that kind of stuff, then we will explore it. So I think for us, the ability for Coach Core to now offer more qualifications than ever before. We're just about to set up, it's already set up, we're about to roll it out this year, a new commercial arm. So we want to be able to not just give away our experience and our insights. We want to be able to put that to market, to be able to help the education and understanding, particularly in the corporate sector, of how to recruit and retain Gen Z, how to work with diverse young people, how to use entry-level apprenticeships, all those larger subject matters that we wouldn't dare for a second to charge our own sector for, but that we can generate some sustainable income for the charity on that way. And then, of course, reinvest that back into supporting more young people. So we are maturing and growing as an organization in terms of us internally, our offer. We've just been through our theory of change to really make sure that, the new staff that have joined recently, we're now 17 in the team, that we're all pointing in the right direction. I go back to those kind of points around what other leaders have taught me. I was privileged to sit next to the RNLI's CEO a couple of years ago. And he was just like, when he came in, he just wanted people to answer one question: how do you save lives at sea? That's all he did. He'd speak to the cleaner and the IT, and they wouldn't be able to answer it. And his proudest thing is that everybody within that organization knows how they save lives at sea. I keep the deck clear. I keep the IT system running. Like, everybody knows it. And I came away from that thinking we have to be able to do the same here. So yeah, it's a really exciting year for us. Some really exciting partnerships coming down the line in which we hope we can help support them with better workforce, more diverse workforce, certainly. And critically, more young people getting into employment.
Okay, so billboard, market square, every employer in Britain is in the market square. What's going on the billboard to let them know about, let's talk about the wider space, not just specifically Coach Core, but the apprenticeship space and the value added based on all the learning and the reflections. How would you condense that down to 3 or 4 bullet points that every single employment lead is going to see in this country?
Oh, that's a good question. Something along the lines of, you say you want diversity, but are you ready for it? Because I think I've seen some really lovely, well-meaning organizations and individuals within those organizations. I truly believe they are genuine in their heart when they say, we want to promote more diversity. We want more young Black females working here. We want people with disabilities working here. Then when I just poke around a little bit, I realize that they're still employing the same recruitment strategies as they do for all the staff that they have done for the last 10 years. So when they're going, we're not getting any applications, it's, well, where are you putting your advert? They're not staying around very long. Okay, so how did you induct that person different to that person? So I think there's still a wider employer question that they really need to either certainly reflect on, but be a bit more bolder and go and ask for more help and evolve with the times. Because Gen Z, now Gen Alpha, are coming through and they are demanding very different things. They don't want jobs for life in the main. They want to be able to work from home. They want to be able to do X and Y and Z. So are you really ready for the diverse workforce that you say that you're willing to do? And I'll give you a quick example. So a very well-known high street bank, I presented at a conference, very, very sweet, lovely lady. I don't want to make a sweeping statement about her, but her voice indicated that she was from a certain class, let's just say. And then she said to me that she's really tried and really given opportunities to, young people, but one of them turned up for an interview recently and he had trainers on. I said, oh, right, okay. And she sort of registered that I wasn't very shocked. And she's like, well, don't you think that's very unprofessional? And I said, well, let me ask you one quick question back. Were his trainers black? And she said, yes. I said, they're probably the best shoes he owns. And you saw this poor woman deflate, right? And I quickly wanted to pick her up and say, look, that's not your fault, but it's your employer's fault. Like, you guys need to sort of understand this generation, they're not going to buy shoes. They might not be able to afford it if you're coming in at those real entry level, graduate youth employment roles or whatever. So I just think, there's a wider thing here that a lot of organizations from micro through to mega need to really reflect on their diversity and recruitment tactics.
Okay, well, for all the leaders out there, obviously been on a hell of a journey, what have been some of the key reflections and takeaways that if I had 10 up and coming aspiring charity or whatever organization it is, CEOs or directors or people heading into that space, what are you going to say to them based on everything you've picked up so far, other than run for the hills?
No, I just think so if we're talking about young people coming into an organization, I think particularly if you are very aware of the fact that they have perhaps been out of work, maybe it's their first job, whatever it might be, like, I think there's still a assumption that they're going to be work ready. And I think you really need to slow down your expectations in the early few weeks. Those few weeks, so we're very fortunate, our success rates are, well, we're not fortunate because the team worked very hard. That was almost very dismissive of the brilliant work my team do. But our success rates are way above national average, right? And I think one of the big things that the team do a really good job of instilling is making sure in those first few weeks, you are explaining what a calendar looks like, how to use a journey planner, all those things that we almost take for granted, right? Because those that do drop out, it's usually within those first few weeks, because that workplace setting is very daunting, very different, very hard. So you need to ease them in. And that little bit of short-term pain is paid back dividends long-term, right? So I definitely think there's that. And also one of the things that, appreciate, I've been talking and waffling for quite some time on this, but like, not all roads point back to Coach Core. Right, our model, if you don't know who we are, is we convene and we collaborate. We bring it all together. We're not the experts. Yes, we can hopefully provide good data insight and examples of best practice, but so can a lot of others. So we're not doing anything really other than checking that those places of employment are right for that young person and supporting those employers along the way. What I mean by that and why I bring that up is that you talk about 10 leaders. One of my first advice would be, well, go and, if you're one of those 10, speak to the other 9 as well. Don't just take one organization's word for it. Don't speak to the first training provider that comes through the door. Don't forget you are a client essentially of, the college or wherever it is that you might be working with it, and go and speak to others and just check that you're going to get the best possible service and stuff as well. So there's so much good stuff out there. And again, we are very fortunate that in our sector and space, so many leaders and experts, so-called, in our sector will make time for you, talk with you, because we all want the best outcomes for young people in particular.
Okay, I know you're really active on the digital side of things, and I think kind of goes without saying, I know I've got a WhatsApp group with yourself and a few others in terms of just different ideas and projects and innovations, but can you just speak a little bit? You've already mentioned around that support network and stuff, but in terms of practicalities for those people out there, whether it's LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatever it is, what are the things that might be quite subtle or easy to do, but actually they've made a massive difference to you?
In terms of how we're attracting young people, what lens are you applying, Kev?
I'm going to ask through the Gary lens. So specifically in terms of how you manage to lead and navigate the challenges that come and, whatever role people in, they're going to have those kind of things, right? It might be a different scale, but how do you navigate that, leaning onto that community that you've got around you?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think LinkedIn has really evolved and morphed. Yes, there's still that quite, I am going to be quite blunt about it, that quite cheesy, look at me type thing, or it's a tool for sales or whatever. But I actually believe it's a classic case of, if you don't want to see that content, don't follow it. The algorithms and all of that of life as well. But I think, within the LinkedIn community, there's some wonderful groups and connections. I mean, even I remember, it wasn't this Christmas just gone, it was the one before, I started a bit of a thread going, right, how many leaders can we name all 92 football teams with people that support these clubs? Can we get all 92 represented? And I think we got all but 5 done. And it was such a lovely thread of all these people just chipping in, going, bloody hell, didn't know you supported Hull, or, me as a Plymouth fan, or whatever sort of thing. So I think that engagement, yes, okay, it's very digital and a little bit fatalist, but like LinkedIn, I think is a brilliant way of, I've shared some blogs, some very honest blogs about how things are going, what's going on. And I think pound for pound, those are the ones that get the most interactions. So when I'm being super open and honest and saying, I'm either struggling with something, I don't know this, I want to celebrate this, but not to hold me up on a pedestal, but to talk about other people or an issue or something, like those are the things that get the most engagement. So I think if you are brave and you're bold, and for some people that is a really uncomfortable place to be, but by sharing, I think you'll be amazed by the response that you get and the offers of help you get. And even, I put one out recently about grief. I definitely am not going to betray any confidences. I was slightly blown away by the number of direct messages I got from people that either resonated or said that they were struggling themselves. So definitely on that, I think, as you say, WhatsApp groups are a brilliant little way of setting up little communities of other leaders. We have a breakfast club. We have, there's different things with people based in and around London. So look at the geographics, look at the amazing people that are based in your local area, and heaven forbid, go and set up a coffee every quarter, make time for it. We always threaten this thing. Let's have a brew or a beer soon. Yeah. And no one ever then puts when, as if that's like some offensive thing to do. If you're really genuine in it, then set it up, do it, like go for it. Because again, you have those conversations, they open those doors. I just think it applies across everything. It's across Instagram, on your stories, or whatever platform you're using. Just be really brave and bold. You don't have to do it all the time, because then that becomes white noise as well. But those connections are really, really powerful. And I think making time for the face-to-face element, go to the conferences. Even I had this the other day where people were like, yeah, but it's so expensive. And I was like, it depends what you're doing. Elevate is free. There's plenty of other places where you can go where there's still free to access places where you can build your network. And that's all I and Coach Core have done. We've just built a network of people, like-minded people that want to see the right change. And it's the podcast that you've just listened to, have a share of that within your group or whatever it might be. So yeah, sorry, slightly long-winded answer, I think, but I think for me, it's just about that transparency of your successes and your failures, your weaker moments as much as your stronger moments, and bring people on the journey with you. And 9 times out of 10, it will be really positive results, most of which you probably couldn't predict.
And what you'll find is, I think, for a lot of people out there, actually being authentic, whether they're comfortable doing it or they just follow people who do it like yourself, it then starts to model to that next generation. Like, it's okay to say, I'm not sure about this, or I surround myself with people because I'm not sure about this, or I've grown here and this is how I've done it through podcasts or courses or whatever it is. So that is some absolute gold in there. Let's go back to PE teachers said join the running club. You go into that running club and you've started coaching for the first time, knowing everything you know now. I know everyone says, like, I wouldn't be where I am if someone came back and told me it's different, and I get that. But if you could at least offer some reflections on what you perhaps would go back and say, what would that be?
I mean, I'm very fortunate that, like, of one of the things that my dad did impart on me was, don't regret anything, right? Like, there's things you might wish you'd done a bit differently, but don't regret anything. Learn from stuff, but don't regret anything. And my coach definitely instilled that. But I look back and I just think I came out of what situation I had at home in particular with this massive, like, something to prove attitude. And it's got me really far in life. I'm not apologetic for it, but I would go back to that young person and just say, just don't try so hard. Like, don't be so quick to please, like don't worry about what other people think of you, that kind of thing. And it's really difficult, obviously, as in your formative years when you're trying to make your way in the world, not to do that. But I look back and I just think, wow, I really needed affirmation all the time. Like I struggled massively with my confidence, I think, because of it. And I think it shocked when I first started to reflect and talk to people on that. It shocked a lot of people because I am very extrovert. I am very loud. Like I'm very cocky and confident when I was around a running track and that kind of stuff. But yet inside, completely the opposite, like totally the opposite. And I think that's been one of my biggest learning lessons working with young people is, it's like the amount that kid's bad. That kid's right. I can genuinely count on one hand the amount of kids in all my years of coaching that I just knew were going to be in prison or worse because, such was their environment at home. They just stood no chance, really. Most of them are just misunderstood or angry or don't know how to channel their emotions. They're not emotionally intelligent enough yet. You need to be the person that calms it and works with them and helps them. So yeah, I think for me, it would very much be just, don't try so hard, mate. You're going to be fine. Like you'll get there eventually.
Well, we'll obviously make sure we include both stuff for yourself and for the charity in the show notes. I'm very proud to be supporting what you're doing through, obviously, London Marathon, which is getting terrifyingly close now. But what would be your one message, I guess, to our listeners and viewers out there just to take away as we head into, another year of opportunities, excitement, but perhaps, like you said, a little bit of reflecting on the way we do things and perhaps trying something a bit different?
Yeah, thanks, Kev. It's people like you that obviously keep the charities going. Basically, it's amazing. You don't have to do this. You're doing it to support us, which is huge. So a huge thank you to you, and obviously anybody that's listening that gives their time for charity. It's the lifeblood of obviously the work that we do. I think for me, I touched upon it earlier. I'm hoping this podcast is in and around Apprenticeship Week when this reaches your ears. Something that understandably we celebrate and that we want to talk about the power of apprenticeships and stuff. I would just really, like I said before, have a 360 on how you might, and that's the key word to underline, might involve apprentices in your workplace. And for those that listen that are amateur clubs, volunteer clubs, so again, my own club is one of the oldest running clubs in the whole country. You might be thinking, well, this doesn't apply to us. We can't employ them. No, you can't. But the leisure centre, perhaps where your track is based, can, where that leisure centre track has sat dormant for quite some time during the day, that they could bring some primary school kids in that then redeploy some hours back out to you as the volunteer club to do the coaching in the evening. So now you've got some consistent coaches from the local area. Some of the kids they've just worked with in the day in the school setting can come through to your club. Like there are ways of working these things. We've had people sharing apprentices. We've had people redeployed back in. England Boxing, that partnership that won an award in its own right, was a prime example of how you take probably the most amateur, cash-strapped, volunteer-led sport, and you can actually place employed apprentices within that setting by having the contract within a larger body. So there's plenty of ways that you can use and work with apprenticeships. And even if you do already work with apprenticeships, that question I asked earlier, are you really ready for diversity? Is there other ways that you can bring a more diverse talent into your business? How are you supporting them when they're in there? Are you lucky enough that they've gone, yes, I want to work for this employer. So what are you going to do to keep them? And organizations like us, you don't have to work with us. I just want to underline that point. Like if you do and you come and want to, support with a Coach Core apprentice, we'd love to help. But if you just want a bit of advice and you just want some support on understanding any of the things that we've covered across today and feel like I or we can do that, then our inbox is always open. We are ultimately a system partner of Sport England for a reason. We love what we do. We want to help more young people into employment. And if that's with other training providers and other employers and other projects, wonderful. If it's with us, even better. But we're here to support you. So yeah, those are probably the questions I would ask. If you've never had apprentice before, could you? Let's be really innovative about it. And if you have had apprentices before, are you really ready for diversity and supporting them in the best possible way?
Well, it's a lovely way to pull it all together, and I always enjoy our conversations, both professionally and personally. You've been a real impact over the last few years in terms of the conversations you've had, the people you've introduced me to, and just the reflections that you've kind of made me think about. So I'm really grateful for all of that, and obviously your time today. And we'll make sure, obviously, we link up everyone with everything you're up to, personally and professionally, in the show notes.
Hmm.
But Gary, a huge thank you for your time.
No, thank you, mate. Absolute privilege. Hoping some of it's resonated today. Just don't put my Instagram out there because it's just rehab videos of awful looking feet at the moment. So, yeah.
A huge thank you to Gary for joining us today. You can connect with him and Coach Core via the links below this episode. And if you are able to sponsor me in raising funds for Coach Core as I take on the London Marathon in April, you can also find my fundraising page linked in the show notes. As always, be sure to hit subscribe however you're joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us again very soon for another episode of the Road Monkey Podcast.